The Amish raise bees the way nature intended, without relying on modern gadgets or fancy tools. It's a slow, steady process that values patience over speed, with every step focused on working with the bees rather than controlling them. In a world obsessed with quick fixes, it's refreshing to see how they trust in tradition and instinct. Their bees thrive without chemicals or interference, and the honey they produce, pure and unfiltered, just the way it's meant to be. Honestly, watching how they operate makes you wonder if all our high-tech solutions are just making things harder. Maybe the real secret to success is keeping it simple and a little sweeter. When it comes to building hives, the Amish stick to what's simple, sturdy, and close to nature. Forget those store-bought beekeeping boxes. They're not interested in anything that smells like mass production. Instead, they craft their own hives, often from wood they harvest on their farms. There's something satisfying about knowing that every part of the process, right down to the hive, came from your own hands and land. Plus, the bees seem to appreciate the personal touch. They move in and get to work like little construction crews that know exactly what they're doing, no permits required. Did you know bees can build a new hive in just a few days when conditions are right? I know contractors who could learn a thing or two from them. The key to this natural hive building method is trust, both in the bees and in old-school craftsmanship. The Amish let the bees handle the architecture, only providing the framework, and these little builders don't mess around. A swarm can whip up a brand new home faster than some of us can clean out our garage. When everything clicks, the hive turns into a buzzing metropolis in no time, with honeycomb popping up like high-rise apartments. I once tried putting together one of those flat-pack furniture pieces, and let's just say the bees would have had it assembled in half the time, and probably without any leftover screws. The beauty of these handmade hives is they blend right into the landscape. No bright plastic frames or high-tech parts, just wooden structures that feel like they belong there. The bees don't seem to mind the lack of modern amenities either. In fact, they prefer it. Synthetic materials can throw off their delicate sense of smell, but natural wood? It's like moving into a cozy log cabin instead of a plastic shoebox. Who wouldn't choose the log cabin? Another thing the Amish do right is positioning the hives in just the right spot, usually near fields or gardens where the bees can gather nectar easily. They aren't about micromanaging. They just make sure the bees have what they need and step back. If the bees want to buzz off and explore, that's their business. You can't micromanage a bee anyway. Trust me, they don't take kindly to unsolicited advice. This hands-off approach also has practical benefits. By keeping things natural, the bees are less stressed, which means they're more productive. It's kind of like the difference between working from home in pajamas versus showing up at an office in a stiff suit. The bees get to do what they do best without unnecessary interference, and the Amish enjoy honey that's pure and full of flavor. Everyone wins. Inspecting a hive might sound like a job that requires fancy gear and loads of caution, but the Amish handle it in their own calm way. They don't suit up like astronauts preparing for a mission. Instead, they opt for plain clothes and a whole lot of trust in the bees. Sure, they might use a long-sleeve shirt and a simple veil if needed, but mostly they rely on experience and steady hands. The goal isn't just to avoid getting stung, though that's a definite bonus, but to keep the bees comfortable and avoid disturbing their workflow. Because when bees get stressed, the whole hive knows it. Ever tried working with a stressed-out colleague? Same idea, except these ones have stingers. The trick, they say, is all in the timing and observation. Amish beekeepers inspect the hives at just the right moment, usually when the bees are calm, like early in the morning or late afternoon. No need for high-tech gadgets. They use their eyes and ears to catch subtle signs, like the tone of the buzzing or the scent coming from the hive. It's almost like learning a second language, except the grammar is made of wings and wax. I gave this technique a go once, thinking I'd nailed the timing, but it turns out wearing a bulky coat wasn't the brightest idea. Bees don't appreciate clumsy movements, and neither do the Amish. Experience really is the best teacher. A bit of smoke is their only tool. Not the fancy smoker with all the bells and whistles, just simple natural materials like dried grass or pine needles. A few gentle puffs of smoke, and the bees get the message, it's time to chill. Smoke works like magic to calm the hive, slowing down their response and making them easier to inspect. If only it worked that well on humans. Can you imagine puffing a little smoke at someone in traffic and suddenly they're in a Zen state? Might solve a lot of road rage problems. These inspections aren't rushed either. Patience is key. Amish beekeepers move frame by frame, looking for signs of healthy brood, checking for honey stores, and ensuring the queen is doing her thing. It's a delicate balance. Intervene too much, and you risk upsetting the bees. Do too little, and you could miss the signs of a problem. It's all about knowing when to step in and when to let nature run its course, which, come to think of it, applies to more than just beekeeping. There's something calming about the whole process. It's almost meditative, being out there with the bees, surrounded by the soft hum of the hive, the smell of wax, and wildflowers in the air. No screens, no notifications, just you, the bees, and a bit of smoke. And when the inspection's done, there's this quiet satisfaction in knowing you've done your part without disrupting the natural order. It's a reminder that not everything needs a quick fix or high-tech solution. Sometimes all you need is patience, observation, and a steady hand, and maybe a thinner coat. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. Harvesting honey with the Amish is a masterclass in waiting. No shortcuts, no high-speed electric extractors, just time and gravity doing their thing. The process? Simple. They cut out the honey-filled combs from the hive and let the honey slowly drip through a sieve, like watching syrup crawl out of a bottle on a cold morning. It might sound tedious, but there's something satisfying about letting nature take its sweet time. It's a far cry from the fast-paced, instant results mindset we're used to. If you told someone today they had to wait a few days to get honey from a comb, they'd probably start brainstorming drone delivery solutions before lunch. And speaking of patience, here's the real kicker. The Amish often harvest honey only once a season. That's right, once. Compare that to modern beekeepers who might pull honey every few weeks with their mechanical extractor spinning away. But the Amish prefer to give their bees more time to replenish the honey stores, ensuring there's plenty left to sustain the hive through lean times. It's a practice that's just as much about respecting the bees as it is about producing honey. No one's rushing anyone here. Not the bees, not the beekeeper, and certainly not the honey. I tried something similar once, thinking I'd be the master of patience. I sat watching honey trickle from a piece of comb, determined not to rush the process. About 30 minutes in, I realized I'd run out of things to think about. It takes a special kind of calm to do this well, and the Amish seem to have it in spades. Me? Let's just say I gave up and checked my phone. The result of all this waiting is worth it, though. The honey harvested this way is richer, with layers of flavor you don't get when everything's done in a hurry. It's as if the time it takes to drip adds a little magic to the mix, like a slow-cooked meal that tastes better than anything microwaved. Ever noticed how some things just can't be rushed? Like waiting for bread to rise or convincing a cat to sit on your lap? It's on their terms, not yours. Honey's the same way. And here's a fun fact. In its raw form, honey never really goes bad. Archaeologists found jars of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs, and it was still good to eat. That's the kind of shelf life you won't get from anything sitting in a supermarket aisle. With this in mind, the Amish stash honey for long winters, using it not just for food, but as a natural remedy for coughs and colds. You won't find them relying on store-bought medicine when they have golden jars of goodness right at home. If you're picturing an Amish beekeeper decked out in those bulky white suits you see on TV, think again. They take a simpler approach. No hazmat vibes here. More often than not, it's just long sleeves, trousers, and maybe a veil if the bees are feeling particularly sassy that day. In fact, many of them trust their experience so much that they skip the veil altogether. They know the bees, and the bees, most of the time, Know them. It's almost like a mutual understanding. I won't bother you if you don't bother me. And if the bees break that unspoken deal, well, let's just say getting stung becomes a quick reminder that trust has its limits. Funny enough, experienced beekeepers, including the Amish, tend to get stung less than you'd think. In fact, they say that knowing how to move around a hive reduces the sting risk by 99%. Compare that to a first-timer like me. When I tried my hand at hive inspection, I got stung within the first 5 minutes. And let me tell you, nothing teaches you the art of graceful retreat quite like a determined bee chasing you across a field. Next time, I thought, maybe I'll stick to flowers. The Amish take a calm, respectful approach toward their bees, and the bees seem to appreciate it. Well, as much as bees can show appreciation, it's all about reading the hive's mood, moving slowly, and not acting like you've had 5 espressos. There's an art to not panicking when a bee buzzes too close to your face. Some people might run screaming. The Amish just keep calm and carry on, as if a bee on your nose is no big deal. Honestly, it's a life lesson hidden in beekeeping. Stay calm in the chaos. For them, all that fancy protective gear just gets in the way of building a connection with the hive. They believe that knowing how to handle bees without panicking is the best protection there is. And you know what? They're probably right. There's something refreshing about seeing someone work with nature without treating it like a hazard zone. I'll admit, it takes some guts to get that comfortable around bees. My first thought when I saw them without all the layers was, no way. But there they were, cool as cucumbers, working the hives like it was just another day in the garden. For someone used to modern conveniences, it's both impressive and humbling to see how little they rely on anything more than experience and a little faith. It's not just bravery, though. There's wisdom behind it, too. With fewer barriers between them and the bees, the Amish learn to read the hives better. They understand the rhythms of the colony, when to approach, when to leave them be, and when to add a bit of smoke for good measure. That kind of intuition doesn't come from textbooks. It's earned through years of hands-on experience. The absence of gear also means fewer distractions, which brings a sense of mindfulness to their work. It's just the beekeeper, the bees, and the moment. A far cry from modern life, where even waiting 5 seconds for a video to load feels unbearable. There's something grounding about being fully present, even when surrounded by thousands of buzzing insects. The Amish are not big fans of shortcuts, whether it's in their farming, their homes, or, of course, their beekeeping. That means no chemical pesticides, no synthetic mite treatments, and definitely no lab-created solutions to keep hives buzzing. They rely on natural methods to solve natural problems. It's the kind of no-nonsense approach that makes you wonder if we've all been doing things the hard way with modern chemicals. When pests or diseases threaten their hives, the Amish turn to things like herbs, essential oils, and hands-on hive management. Think of it like aromatherapy for bees, except these bees aren't getting pampered for fun. Mites, for instance, hate essential oils like thyme and tea tree, which the Amish use to keep them at bay. Lavender oil, known for its calming effect on humans, works just as well to soothe anxious bees. Honestly, who knew the secret to happy hives was the same stuff people sprinkle on pillows for better sleep? It's not just oils either. The Amish keep their hives healthy by rotating combs, which helps prevent disease buildup. And they're vigilant, watching for signs of trouble before it starts. If there's a problem, they handle it quickly and naturally, which is a far cry from spraying chemicals and hoping for the best. This kind of management takes patience, but as any beekeeper will tell you, bees thrive under good care. And the Amish have patience in spades. I remember trying to grow a small herb garden once, thinking I'd finally take a page out of the natural living playbook. Let's just say the bugs saw my plants as an all-you-can-eat buffet, and my organic methods didn't last long. Watching the Amish use these same herbs to successfully protect their hives, well, it makes my little gardening failure feel like amateur hour. Now, if you're wondering how they manage without the stuff modern beekeepers swear by, here's an interesting tidbit. Studies show that bees raised with fewer chemical interventions live healthier, longer lives. Pesticides weaken their immune systems, making them more susceptible to diseases. So, the Amish aren't just being old-fashioned, they're actually ahead of the curve. They're giving their bees a fighting chance by working with nature, not against it. And let's not forget that treating bees naturally isn't just good for the bees. It's good for the honey, too. Without chemicals, you get pure, untainted honey. Some folks might call it organic, but for the Amish, it's just the way it's always been done. If you've ever tasted honey straight from an Amish hive, you'll know it's got a richness and depth that store-bought jars can't touch. It's the kind of flavor that makes you think twice before squeezing honey from one of those plastic bears ever again. This focus on natural beekeeping is also part of a bigger picture for the Amish. Healthy bees mean more pollination, and more pollination means healthier crops. It's a full circle system, everything working together just as nature intended. And when the bees thrive, the whole farm benefits. No need for modern chemicals to keep things running smoothly. They trust the bees, the land, and a bit of herbal know-how to handle the rest. When the Amish harvest honey, it's not just about having something sweet to spread on their bread. In typical Amish fashion, honey becomes part of the community's lifeblood. Rather than chasing profits like modern businesses, they share their honey freely with neighbors, friends, and family. They don't just hand over jars either. It's often part of a bartering system. Need a bushel of apples? Trade a jar of honey. Need a helping hand with a barn? Maybe a few jars will sweeten the deal. It's more than just honey. It's the Amish way of keeping relationships buzzing. I once tried this whole bartering thing myself. Swapped a store-bought jar of honey for some farm eggs. Let's just say the look I got made it clear. Mass-produced honey doesn't quite cut it in these circles. If you've ever tasted fresh, local honey, you'll know what I mean. It's not just about the taste, though. There's something almost magical about knowing the honey came straight from the bees a few fields away. It makes every drizzle feel a bit more special. Studies show that local honey even helps with allergies. Bees collect pollen from the plants around them, and consuming that honey can build immunity to local allergens. That's one of those win-win things the Amish have known all along. Honey isn't just a treat. It's medicine, a barter item, and a gift, all rolled into one. And when you're trading or gifting something as personal as honey, it strengthens bonds in a way that money can't. The Amish see honey as part of a much larger system of giving and receiving. It's not hoarded or sold off for profit. It's passed along, spreading goodwill throughout the community. Sure, some of it might find its way to markets, but even that reflects their way of life. It's about balance, enough for the family, enough for the neighbors, and a little bit left over to support the larger community. This kind of generosity reminds me of the time I tried giving away extra zucchini from my garden. It seemed like a good idea until I realized everyone else had zucchini to give away too. Honey, though, is never unwelcome. In fact, the Amish know that a well-timed jar of honey can go a long way in building friendships. Ever noticed how food brings people together? A little honey on warm bread shared with a neighbor might not seem like much, but it's often the start of something bigger. There's also a deeper layer to all of this. Honey is more than a product to the Amish. It's a gift from the bees, and they treat it with respect. When they harvest honey, they always leave enough for the bees to thrive. No overharvesting, no taking more than what's needed. The bees do their part, and the Amish return the favor by ensuring the hive stays healthy and productive. Winter doesn't just test people, it puts bees through the ringer too. When temperatures drop, bees face the kind of challenge you can't solve with a space heater or a programmable thermostat. While modern beekeepers might use electric heating pads to keep their hives toasty, the Amish lean on simpler, more natural methods. They wrap their hives with wool blankets or bales of hay, forming a thick, cozy layer of insulation that traps warmth. Think of it like tucking the bees into bed with a nice, heavy quilt. Except the bees don't complain about having too many layers. I once thought insulating a hive would be as simple as throwing on a blanket. Turns out, it's not. Hay bales aren't just decorative farm props. They serve as both windbreakers and heat retainers. And trust me, arranging hay bales around beehives without disturbing the little critters inside, that's an art form. I learned the hard way that bees don't appreciate sudden noise or clumsy hands. Picture me trying to stack hay as quietly as a ninja while the bees peeked out to see what the commotion was about. Let's just say I discovered they have very low tolerance for amateur construction work. One of the coolest things about bees is that they huddle together to survive the cold. It's called clustering, and it's basically a bee huddle where they vibrate their wings to generate heat. The queen stays at the center of the cluster, kind of like how humans would protect their kids from the cold, and the worker bees rotate positions to make sure everyone gets a turn in the warm zone. It's an efficient survival system, and it's one reason Amish beekeepers trust their bees to get through even harsh winters without intervention. They know nature has its own way of dealing with things. As one Amish farmer told me, the bees know how to look after themselves better than we do. Here's a fun fact. A healthy bee cluster can maintain a core temperature of about 90-95 degrees, 32-35 to C, even when it's freezing outside. That's warmer than my apartment on some winter days. Bees don't mess around when it comes to keeping their queen safe. All the buzzing and wing flapping burns energy, though, so the Amish make sure their bees have plenty of honey stored up for the cold months. It's like filling the pantry before a snowstorm. If the bees don't have enough honey, they won't survive the season. I remember asking one Amish beekeeper if he ever worries about his bees in winter. His response? A calm shrug. Worry doesn't change the weather. Preparedness does. And that pretty much sums up the Amish approach to everything, really, whether it's beekeeping, farming, or life. Interestingly, research shows that colonies that rely more on natural methods like clustering and insulation often fare better in winter than those kept with artificial heating. It seems that when people step back and let bees do their thing, the bees reward them by thriving. That's a lesson the Amish have known for generations. Less interference, better results. Of course, there's always the chance of a rough winter wiping out a hive or two, but that's just part of the cycle. The Amish understand that some losses are inevitable, but as long as the hive is well prepared going into winter, chances are good the bees will emerge buzzing with energy when spring rolls around, and just like that, life picks up where it left off. Bees pollinating flowers, farmers planting crops, and the cycle starting all over again. When it comes to beekeeping, the Amish aren't just raising bees, they're raising the next generation of beekeepers too. Beekeeping is seen as more than a practical skill. It's part of a family legacy. Parents, grandparents, and even siblings all pitch in to pass down their knowledge, making sure the younger folks know the rhythms of the bees, the right seasons for harvesting honey, and even the subtle art of avoiding a sting. And just like the bees work together to build a hive, Amish families work as a unit to keep this tradition alive. Now, I've tried passing down knowledge before. Once attempted to teach my nephew how to make pancakes from an old family recipe. After 3 burnt batches and 1 fire alarm, I concluded that not all traditions survive translation. But the Amish seem to have cracked the code. It's not just about giving instructions, it's about showing, living, and practicing beekeeping until it becomes second nature. You don't need a manual when the lesson is part of your daily life. Beekeeping with the Amish isn't something reserved for the elderly or retired either. Kids get involved early, learning to respect bees long before they even understand the importance of honey production. And they get stung too, because, let's face it, no amount of experience can guarantee 0 stings. But every sting is a lesson. Work gently, stay calm, and above all, understand that the bees aren't out to get you. They just want to get their job done. If that's not a life lesson in patience, I don't know what is. In fact, studies show that children who grow up on farms, including those raised with animals and bees, tend to have stronger immune systems and are less likely to develop allergies. You could say they grow up with a bit of bee armor. Maybe it's the exposure to pollen, or maybe it's just that running around barefoot and working with hives toughens them up. Either way, these kids grow into capable adults who carry their family's beekeeping knowledge forward without missing a beat. But this isn't just a matter of passing down techniques. There's a deeper philosophy that gets transferred as well, an understanding that beekeeping isn't about control. It's about partnership. The bees are treated as fellow workers on the farm, not pets or property. Amish beekeepers know that forcing the bees or trying to manipulate them too much only creates problems. Their job is to give the bees the best conditions possible and then let nature do its thing. One Amish beekeeper I spoke with explained it like this: the bees teach us more than we teach them. That kind of humility runs deep in Amish culture. The younger generation doesn't just learn how to collect honey or build hives, they learn patience, responsibility, and respect for nature. And they learn it through real experience, not just by sitting through lectures or reading books. By the time a young Amish adult is ready to take over the family's hives, they've already spent years watching, helping, and learning by doing. And when they start their own families, they'll pass along the same lessons, ensuring that these traditions stay alive. That's one reason why Amish beekeeping has thrived even as modern technology has swept through agriculture, because it's more than a job, it's a way of life. And what do the bees get out of all this? A stable, healthy environment where they can thrive without interference. In return, they pollinate crops, produce honey, and help the entire community. It's a quiet, humble cycle that works because it's built on respect, both for the bees and for the knowledge passed down through the generations. With all this care and continuity, it's no wonder the Amish bees aren't just producing honey. They're also helping the environment thrive. The same simplicity that keeps their beekeeping method sustainable ensures their role in the ecosystem stays intact. And that takes us to the final piece of the puzzle: how Amish bees, in doing what they do best, help create a healthier, more balanced environment for all of us. It's clear that these gentle giants of the farm teach us more than just how to harvest honey. Their commitment to natural practices, community sharing, and sustainability showcases a harmonious way of life that values both tradition and the environment. So, the next time you enjoy a spoonful of sweet golden honey, take a moment to appreciate not just its deliciousness, but also the hardworking bees and the Amish beekeepers who help bring it to your table. Let's all remember that small actions can lead to big changes, one bee at a time.